welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel. My name is Andy, sometimes Mouse, and I talk about books and book-related things. And today I am giving you my top books of 2023 Battle Royale, in which I put the top books I picked from each month in 2023, and I have them duke it out to pick whatever my top 3 books of the year are. I originally had this drawn out on my whiteboard, which I believe is how I did it last year. However, the lighting today is so bad and it is not temperature conducive for me to set up professional lighting or anything. It's also something that I want to work on for 2024, is to have my lighting situation in this office figured out, but I'm not there right now. So I am going to have it here for you. And I'm also going to try and stay on this side of the screen. When I did my 2023 wrap up, I kept going over here and I needed something to be on this side of the screen. So I have them as note cards. I've had them as note cards. So I have my notes and everything. But let's go ahead and get started with our first 2 who are going to duke it out. We have Breathless by Amy McCulloch and So This Is Ever After by F.T. Lukens. I read Breathless in January. It was very, very stressful and it was an art recommendation. I rated it 4 stars. I was literally late coming back from lunch because I was so invested listening to it that I forgot that I needed to come back from lunch. It's why I now have an alarm set to let me know when my lunch break ends in case I do the same thing again. So This Is Ever After is a fantasy romance. I also rated it 4 stars. I read it in February and this was also an art recommendation. It was very sweet and it made me smile to listen to. However, of the 2 books, which one do I remember well enough that I could maybe remember some of the plot to? It's gonna be Breathless. So I think of the 2 of them that Breathless inherently wins this round. Sorry, So This Is Ever After. It was good though, don't get me wrong. My next 2 pairings is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix, which I read in March, and Rosemary and Rue by Shonda McGuire, which I read in April, which is the first book in the October Day series. So How to Sell a Haunted House, I rated 4 stars, biblical puppets, very stressful. I still think about it and I hate it. I hate it. If I were to, I would recommend this to people who have the specific kind of religious trauma that I have and grew up where they would see possibly religious puppets. Rosemary and Rue is a currently 18 book series, is the first of 18 books. Is it the best book in the series? No. But was it the best book I read in April? Yes. And am I gonna give this one possibly because I liked the whole series? Maybe. I don't know though which one wins. I don't know if it's Grady or if it's Rosemary and Rue. Rosemary and Rue, both of these I rated 4 stars, by the way. I think for impact on me as a person, I'm gonna have to go with Rosemary and Rue, and that's only because I'm gonna reread it. I might read this series a million more times, and it started this deep love of the October Day series, and honestly, those books got me through the year. And now my husband's reading them, so we get to talk about all of them, and that's an additional layer of fantastic to me. So this is my brackets, so I get to rate them on how they make me feel, period. So Rosemary and Rue wins that round. Next up, we have Our Wives Under the Sea by Julie Armfield, which I rated 5 stars and read in May. And then we have The Last to Leave the Room by Caitlin Starling, which I also rated 5 stars and read in June. And I am going to yeet myself into a pit trying to put these 2 together. Also, I do love that for Our Wives Under the Sea, I straight up, one of my notes just says, sorry, Landis. So sorry, Landis. Our Wives Under the Sea, I actually read it twice this past year, but the first year I was just not really in a place to be processing the words that were being said. I don't know a better way of explaining that. But essentially, it's a really good conversation on grief without being a heavy contemporary, and I really appreciated that. It's also a conversation on grieving somebody who is still present and alive, someone who maybe is missing from your life, and you can't grieve them the same way that somebody would someone who's dead, or when you have someone come home and they're so different that you're grieving the person that they once were. It talks about all of those things in a really, really solid way that affected me really deeply. Last to leave the room scared the fuck out of me, stressed me out, made me not trust the doors in my house. Do I know where all these doors came from? Yes, I know where all the doors came from. But yeah, doppelgangers. Doppelgangers are scary. And random doors in your house. If a random door shows up in your house, you leave. You do not use a science-y things and invest, you leave. Why did I put these two together? I know why, because they're like, I'm putting these in chronological order, but like, regrets. I genuinely, I think I'm gonna have to go with Our Wives Under the Sea, just because again, and this is again for like the third time, emotional impact to me is more important than anything else. So this had a deep emotional impact for me. I hate doing the top book. The bottom books are so much easier. Next up, we have How to Be Eaten by Maria Alderman, which I read in July, and it was a 5-star read. And then we have, I'm gonna kill myself. Then we have Mr. Magic by Kirsten White, which I read in August, and it is also a 5-star read. So between these two, which one is my favorite? So let me talk about each one. So How to Be Eaten was kind of like fairy tale retellings, except that they're in a support group together. And the support group, it's like they're discussing and processing having gone through these fairy tale-esque retellings essentially together, and like what that might represent. Some of them had a little bit of fantastical elements, but a lot of them were just like, what if it was just the way that a child might misinterpret something that happened to them, or the way that trauma might misinterpret the way that something happened to somebody, or the way that like your brain will just try to make sense of something, or even make something seem fantastical so that you don't have to process what really happened. All of those things are things that the brain does. So you don't really know, like, is it a actual thing that happened to these people? Is it just something that they did to process it? Who knows? But it was really solid, and it was a really good representation of feminine rage. I like those kinds of books. I like when that's represented really well, and the way that women hold themselves together, or they don't. The like deep range that women have inherently of the way that their rage presents itself. Because I think that men, and no offense to men, right? But I think that men have the tendency to present rage in about 2 different ways, whereas women, it can present in so many ways, and a lot of those ways are very quiet. And I think that this did a really good job of showing that. Mr. Magic is like, if like an alternate reality like if you've ever looked at ARCs, like alternate reality contents or alternate reality games, or like it's a website that talks, so what I'm thinking of is Welcome Home, which is a website that's of like a puppet show that once existed but doesn't anymore, and nobody seems to remember it, nobody's able to talk about it, and what does all that mean? Well, someone wrote a book about that concept, and there's a lot of things that do that. If you lurk the internet like I do, you would know about them. I don't know. I really enjoyed this. I think that the religious trauma in this book is so subtle, that it's so quiet and subtle, that the only reason that like me and, you know, Ozzy caught it was because our experiences were so blatantly religious that we caught it in this book. But I think even if I didn't have the author's note at the end, I wouldn't know for sure that that was part of the basis of this book. It's got a cool mystery. It's a weird kids show. It was just really good. I would own both of these books. Like if I had the chance, I would buy both of these books. I don't own either of them, but I absolutely would buy. Right? No, I don't own either of them, but I absolutely would buy both of them. I don't think I talked about what the genres of like any of the last few books were. Sorry. This one is a horror, and this one is a horror. I think they're all thrillers and horrors. Why am I like this? Anyway, I don't know. You know, I think as much as I liked How to Be Eaten, and as much as I want to talk about How to Be Eaten with other people, I would reread Mr. Magic. I don't think I would reread How to Be Eaten, so I think Mr. Magic is gonna win on this one. Next up, we have The Housemaid, which I read in September, and it is a 5-star read. And then we have Some Desperate Glory, which I read in October by Emily Tesh, head to head. So The Housemaid is a thriller. Some Desperate Glory is a sci-fi. I think this is the first time that they're like very drastically different. Both of these also, why do I do this? Both of these also have like this thing where the first little bit of the book you're like, I don't think I'm having a good time. Why am I reading this? Can I DNF this yet? Which is terrible. That's really a terrible, that's genuinely terrible. This does Some Desperate Glory does a really good job of doing space and time things. The Housemaid does a good twist. I think I'm gonna go with Some Desperate Glory. As much as I enjoyed The Housemaid, I think there are things that could have been done better and conversations that could have been done better. Some Desperate Glory, I think the things that were problematic in the first little bit of the book is addressed within the book, and so it makes up for those things. And last but not least, we have Starter Villain by John Scalzi, which I read in November, and we have Corrections in Ink by Carrie Blakinger. These are also two very, very different books, which the Corrections in Ink I read in December. These are also two very, very different books. This one is a sci-fi and this one is a non-fiction memoir, which is tricky. So Starter Villain, apparently I didn't write down my rating. It was 5 stars, so was Corrections in Ink. Starter Villain genuinely made me laugh out loud. It was really, really fun and tongue-in-cheek, and it might even become a comfort reread, and I own it physically, so bonus points for me. Corrections in Ink was really, really heavy, but also really good, and the conversation around writing things down in ink and having it published in a permanent fashion being so exciting because nothing you own is permanent in prison was real rowdy to read and process. I don't think that most people understand how hard it is to exist in the incarceration system, and also how hard it is to love someone who exists in the incarceration system, and I think that this does a really good job of talking about it. It also talks about a lot of the privilege that Carrie Blakinger inherently received despite having been incarcerated because she was white, and I do appreciate that. However, I think that Starter Villain is the book that I will reread again and I enjoyed more. This book was really hard and heavy, but it was still the best book I read over the month. However, Starter Villain was hands down the best book I read in of the two. Like, I loved Starter Villain. I've recommended it to a bajillion people since then. All right, we've got our 6. Let's get going. I had to stop the video because I got 2 very important text messages. Anyway, moving on. Down to the 6. We've got Breathless, which we talked about, versus Rosemary and Rue. I hate doing the top books. Breathless versus Rosemary and Rue. Very conflicting. I think that I'm gonna go with Rosemary and Rue only because I would read Rosemary and Rue again and I would not read Breathless again. And I know that that's like a dumb basis, but this is my top books, and if you want to do your top books a different way, then you film one. Next we have Our Wives Under the Sea versus Mr. Magic. Our Wives Under the Sea is gonna win. What is my thinking process for that? I still think about Our Wives Under the Sea. There are several quotes in the books about grief that I'm still, to this day, thinking about that are very important to me and mean a lot to me, and the book means a lot to me. That's my hot take on that. Then we've got Starter Villain versus Some Desperate Glory. These are 2 very different moods. However, I'm gonna go with Starter Villain. This one wasn't a huge thinking process for me because I wouldn't read Some Desperate Glory again. And again, I know you're probably thinking, Andy, not everybody rereads, so this isn't a good enough reason. For you. For you. You don't reread, and you don't think that's a good enough reason, then you go make a top books video. Sorry, I'm not trying to fight you guys. I'm just saying that these are my bases, my opinions, okay? Yeah, I hate doing the top books of the year. It's so hard. Okay, so our top 3 books of the year are officially Rosemary and Rue by Shauna Maguire, Our Wives Under the Sea by Julie Armstrong, and Starter Villain by John Scalzi. And if I was going to pick a top book of the year of these 3, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. If you forced me to, I don't know, because these are so drastically different, and my reason for picking them is so different. Rosemary and Rose, because these books as a whole, the entire series, got me through the year. They got me through the year, I'm going to read them again, and they've had a long-lasting impact on my life. Like, these books have genuinely changed the trajectory of my life. They've also changed the trajectory of my husband's life. My husband now calls me a completely different nickname because of these books. We have an inside joke with his dad because of these books. So, like, there's that. This book is so very, Our Wives Under the Sea is so very specific to my current experience that I don't know. I don't know what else to say, but it's so very specific to my current grief and my current experience, and it was such a beautiful way of writing it in such beautiful prose that it affected me deeply emotionally, and I loved it. Starter Villain brought me joy. Deep joy. It was hilarious. I also got to meet John Scalzi this year, which was fucking cool. I bought the book at the Texas Book Festival, and so this book inherently holds some really cool memories, but also it made me laugh a lot. It was a really funny book. I had a lot of fun reading it. So no, I actually couldn't pick a top book out of these three because they are my top three for such drastically different reasons from one another. So I will not be picking a top book out of the three of these. You can't make me, it's my video. Those were my top books of the year, though. All 12 of them, narrowed down to 3. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I'm sorry if you didn't, and I'm also sorry if you're tired of looking at this outfit, because actually, you know what? This is the first time you're going to see this outfit. You're going to see this outfit like 3 more times, because I'm filming a bunch of stuff in one day. So, sorry in advance, but here we are. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and share. If you have read any of these books and deeply enjoyed them, please let me know in the comments down below. If you've read any of these books and deeply did not enjoy them, don't tell me, I don't want to know. I simply don't want to know. But if you're thinking about reading any of them, you should, because they were my top books this year, so you should inherently read them, right? If you didn't enjoy this video, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. However, I post videos every Tuesdays and Thursdays except for the first full week of the month, and I post them at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time every week, again, except that one. And that's it. Don't forget to take your meds, drink your water, and do something today to take care of yourselves. Okay, thanks, bye. I'll see you next week for my bottom books. The worst books of the year, that's coming out next week. So I will see you guys then. Okay, thanks, bye.